Saudi Arabia beat Messi's Argentina. Then, it fired the coach who made it happen. Not after a long collapse, not years later, less than 2 months before the next World Cup. That is the contradiction. That is the click. And that is why this is a much better story than a normal manager sacking. Because Saudi Arabia have qualified for the World Cup. They are heading into a group with Spain, Uruguay, and Cape Verde. They are building one of the most ambitious football images in the sport. They are due to host the World Cup in 2034. And yet, right before the tournament, they look unsettled enough to rip out the most symbolic figure in the project. So this is not really a story about Hervé Renard losing a job. It is a story about what happens when a football nation becomes so ambitious, so image-conscious, and so impatient that even success stops feeling secure. Renard already had a reputation long before Saudi Arabia. He won the Africa Cup of Nations with Zambia, then did it again with Ivory Coast. He built his career on something international football values more than almost anything else, giving teams belief quickly. That matters because national teams do not get club-level control. You do not have endless training sessions. You do not get to buy your way out of weak chemistry. You need clarity, emotion, and trust almost immediately. That is exactly what Renard gave Saudi Arabia in his first spell. He did not transform them into a world power, but he did give them shape, belief, and a sense that they could produce moments bigger than their station. Then came Argentina in Qatar, and from that moment on, he was no longer just a coach on the payroll. He became part of Saudi Arabia's modern football mythology. He was the face of the biggest shock of that tournament and one of the greatest upsets the World Cup has ever seen. When the Roberto Mancini spell failed to convince, Saudi Arabia turned back to the one figure who already looked like proof. That tells you how much Renard meant. He was not just familiar, he represented a memory of control, a memory of pride, a memory of Saudi Arabia looking dangerous on the biggest stage. So the return made emotional sense as much as football sense. He knew the players, he knew the federation, he understood what the shirt meant. Most importantly, he already had the nation's trust in a way very few international coaches ever do. And on the simplest level, the mission worked. Saudi Arabia qualified for the World Cup again. That should have been the stabilizing moment. The story should have become straightforward. The old hero returned, finished the job, and got the team to the tournament. Instead, less than 2 months before kickoff, he was gone. That is what gives the story its force. Qualification happened, but trust still collapsed. Managers get fired all the time. That is football. But this late in the cycle, a sacking means something more. It means a federation has decided continuity feels more dangerous than disruption. It means someone looked at the current path and thought chaos now was preferable to drifting another few weeks. That is a serious admission. Because if you fire the coach this close to the World Cup, you are effectively telling the world that whatever was happening inside the project no longer felt manageable. You are saying the problem was urgent enough to blow up the normal logic of tournament preparation. And when a nation as visible as Saudi Arabia makes that decision, it lands differently. This is not a forgotten qualifier somewhere on the edge of the football map. This is a country spending heavily on football, shaping a global sports identity, and preparing to host the World Cup in 2034. That means the standard is not simple survival anymore. The standard is whether the whole project looks convincing. And apparently, somebody decided it no longer did. This is the deeper reason the story works. For many nations, qualification is the dream. It is enough. It can define a whole era. But Saudi Arabia no longer presents itself like a country asking only for a seat at the table. It presents itself like a country that expects to matter. And once a nation starts seeing itself that way, qualification becomes the minimum. After that, everything else gets judged more harshly. The recent form, the atmosphere, the symbolism, the degree of control, whether the team feels like it is moving towards something or away from it. That is why Renard could qualify and still be expendable. This was not just about getting there. It was about whether the federation still believed he could carry the image and authority the project now demands. That is a brutal standard, especially for the man most closely associated with the team's last truly unforgettable World Cup moment. Georgios Donis is reportedly the man being lined up to replace him. And that matters because of what a late appointment like that usually means. You are not hiring a visionary at that point. You are hiring a fixer, someone to simplify, someone to steady the group, someone to get through the tournament without public collapse. That shifts the emotional read completely. This does not feel like a federation serenely following a long-term football philosophy. It feels like a federation grabbing the wheel, hard, late, with very little runway left. And that matters even more because the group is not forgiving. Saudi Arabia are facing Spain and Uruguay, with Cape Verde arriving as a dangerous Tuchel with freedom on their side. There is almost no room for a Messi adjustment period. So the replacement is not just a name, it is proof of urgency. This is the problem with creating a football myth. Once it exists, every future version of the team gets measured against it. Saudi Arabia will always be the side that shocked Argentina. Renard will always be the coach in that picture. That memory is now part of how the team is seen, both inside the country and outside it. So when the federation fires him, it is not just making a tactical decision. It is severing itself from the symbolic bridge back to its own greatest recent moment. That is why the move feels so cold, and that is why it says so much. The federation is effectively telling us that memory matters, but control matters more. That pride matters, but only if it still serves the present. That even the coach who authored the miracle is disposable if the project no longer feels stable enough. So what is this story actually about? Not just a coach being fired, not even just Saudi Arabia being ruthless. It is about a football nation becoming too ambitious to be comforted by qualification. It is about a sports project so determined to look powerful that it risks revealing its own instability instead. And it is about the strange cruelty of modern football, where the man who gave you your biggest recent memory can still be pushed out just before the world starts watching again. Saudi Arabia fired the coach who beat Argentina. That line already works, but the deeper line is even better. Saudi Arabia built a modern football identity around one miracle, reached the next World Cup, and still decided that the man most tied to that identity was no longer safe to trust. That is not calm confidence. That is pressure. That is impatience. That is panic dressed up as decisiveness. And if that is the emotional state of the project now, then the real drama is not just whether Saudi Arabia survived the group. It is whether this whole football vision knows the difference between ambition and instability before the tournament exposes it.